parking lot is where this call from Ronna McDaniel and Donald Trump was received, and they instructed these two individuals and pressured them. You voted to certify, demanding this audit, but if you don't sign this certification, you cannot sign the certification, because if you do sign this certification, you'll never get the audit that you're pressing for.
That was a reporter from the Detroit News speaking about audio recording he says he heard, which reportedly captured Donald Trump telling Michigan officials not to certify the 2020 election results. We're going to dig into that explosive new reporting. Plus, as Trump continues to double down on his anti-immigrant rhetoric, a recent poll shows Republican voters say that his racist language makes them more likely to vote for him. Also ahead, America's mayor is broke. Rudy Giuliani filed for bankruptcy just days after being ordered to pay $146 million in his defamation case. And regrets, he's had a few. What Republican presidential candidate Ron DeSantis is saying is the one thing he wishes he could change about the GOP primary. Here's a hint. It's not anything that he did. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. I'm Jonathan Lemire, along with the BBC's Caddy K, in for Joe, Mika, and Willie. And with us, we have former White House Director of Communications to President Obama, our friend Jennifer Palmieri. She's also the co-host of the MsNbC podcast, How to Win 2024. You just saw him fill in on Way Too Early. White House editor for Politico, Sam Stein, is here. And sitting with me at the table, NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard. So, Caddy, we've known for a while that Donald Trump tried to overturn the 2020 election results. But now we've got some more specific evidence, it would appear.
Yeah, we may be inching towards the Christmas holidays, John, but the news is not stopping. And we begin with another reported example of Donald Trump, as you say, trying to overturn that election loss while he was the president. This time it involves the certification process in Michigan's most populous county. We're not talking about Georgia here, we're talking about Michigan. The Detroit News reports that on a mid-November 2020 phone call, Trump pressured two Republican members of the Wayne County Board of Canvassers, telling them not to sign the certification of the county's 2020 results, which Biden won by nearly 40 points. The conversations were captured in recordings reviewed by the Detroit News. NBC News has not heard or verified those recordings. During the phone call, which included RNC chairwoman Ronna McDaniel, Trump reportedly told Monica Palmer and William Hartman they would look terrible, quote, if they signed the certification, because in an earlier canvasser meeting, Palmer and Hartman originally voted against approving the county's election results before switching to votes of support during that same meeting. Following that meeting and the call with Trump, Hartman and Palmer tried unsuccessfully to rescind their votes in favor of certification, saying they were pressured to do so. The Detroit News reached out to spokespeople for the former president, RNC chair McDaniel, and canvasser Monica Palmer. None disputed a summary of that call. The other canvasser, William Hartman, died in 2021. I mean, John, it sounds similar to Georgia, right? With the you've got to find me those votes, and you know, who knows what impact this will have, but it is another example, this recording, of the kind of pressure that election officials were under to switch the 2020 election in favor of Donald Trump.
Yeah, Michigan, like Georgia, a battleground state again next year. And Vaughn Hilliard, you know, we've known for a while that Donald Trump personally got involved in Georgia. Spoke to the Secretary of State there, asked Brad Raffensperger to find the precise number of votes he would need to flip and put Georgia in his column. And I think that's what's so striking here, is that it's Trump himself, with the power of the presidency behind him, potentially calling from the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, trying to lean on state officials to commit fraud.
Right, behind the scenes. Don't forget, he literally called Arizona Governor Doug Ducey as he was signing Arizona's certification, but Doug Ducey turned over his phone and didn't take the phone call. He also called up Arizona House Speaker Rusty Bauer. But taking Michigan here, you're talking about the Wayne County Board of Canvassers. These are public servants, if you will. These are folks that are nominated by their local political parties. Then the local county clerk says, hey, you're going to be the one to ultimately certify the results. And it is under law their obligation to do so. But you just heard it. Those two Republicans, they attempted to go back and rescind their certification of Wayne County's results. This is the overwhelmingly Democratic county that was responsible ultimately for giving Joe Biden the win. After Donald Trump's phone call, along with RNC chairwoman Ronna McDaniel, they tried to rescind their certification. This is at the crux of not only the 2020 election, but concerns about elections in the future, because it's those local officials that folks wholly understand in political parties now are essential to the democratic process and being able to certify the election results.
Yeah, I'm with Vaughn. You know, at first I was like, this sounds obviously like something Donald Trump would do, because we know he did it before. And then you sort of step back and you think about the severity and enormity of it, and the idea that the president, the sitting president of the United States, would call these two low-level officials who were doing a civic duty, and the amount of pressure they probably felt vis-a-vis that phone call. And I guess, you know, I've thought a lot about this, and I would love to get Jen's take on this, because she's actually served on a campaign. But if you were the Biden campaign, would the idea that this would happen ever cross your mind? Would the idea that you'd have to prepare for something like this ever cross your mind? And will this irrevocably change how campaigns operate going forward? Now, in 2024, will the DNC, will the Biden campaign have to resort to expending resources, doing, you know, the type of educational stuff for poll workers to make sure that they aren't influenced or that they are immune to this type of pressure?
Yeah, you would. You would have to do that. I mean, they have, I think starting in 16, we had pretty aggressive training for, legal training for volunteers, people who were, you know, going to be for poll workers, for people who were going to be at polling places, just not administering the vote, but being on standby in case voters had problems with the vote. So you'll have to have a whole legal operation alongside the campaign that is thinking about what happens once the voting stops. So everything from counting to certifying to, all the processes that we became familiar with in 2020. And, Trump failed with Georgia. He failed with Arizona when he appealed to higher level officials like the governor and the secretary of state. But with lower level county officials or even party officials that are on these county boards, it worked. So what can we expect to happen in 24? You expect a lot of this. So it is going to have to be. It's been a big priority for campaigns for a while to build this kind of, to have this kind of operation to look at legally what's happening post vote, but it'll be a bigger deal in 24.
Now, a key difference next year, of course, is that Trump this time won't have the power of the presidency behind him. But certainly Democratic staffers and the Biden re-election team are preparing for all sorts of chicanery. We want to turn now to get an update on a big story we've been tracking the last couple of days. And Vaughn, you've been following the timing of former President Trump's legal team's expected appeal of the Colorado Supreme Court decision that removed the ex-president from the 2024 primary ballot. Vaughn, what's the latest?
Right. Timing is everything here. I mean, you're looking at all of these primaries beginning. Iowa's going first on January 15th, New Hampshire 1 week later on January 23rd. And if the Supreme Court were to affirm the Colorado Supreme Court's decision and disqualify Donald Trump from the ballot in Colorado, that would have a far-reaching impact, likely removing him from the ballot in all 50 states. And of course, the concern of the Republican Party is the potential nullification of Republican electorate's votes as they're trying to select their presidential nominee. I am told that his team does, in fact, intend to file the appeal and take their chances, take this to the U.S. Supreme Court. We expect them to not file that appeal until after Christmas, so sometime most likely next week, but before January 4th, which is the requirement under the Colorado Supreme Court's ruling for them to appeal if, in fact, Donald Trump were to stay on the ballot as part of the stay, as part of that initial order.
Now, President Biden hasn't weighed in on the merits of the case, but we heard from him this week, Caddy, saying that it was clear that Donald Trump inspired an insurrection. But there's been a lot of debate about the political fallout here, with many Democrats worrying that this will just make Trump all the stronger.
Yeah, and of course, Donald Trump fundraising off the back of it, right? I'm sure your email box, John, is full of email campaigns from the Trump campaign saying, please give us money because of all of this that's going on. And this latest one, just another one that they're trying to raise money out of. Meanwhile, of course, Donald Trump, legal issues aside, is continuing to use dehumanizing language about migrants, rhetorics that has historians drawing comparisons to phrases that were used by Adolf Hitler. Here's what he said in one of 17 videos posted on social media just last night.
Illegal immigration is poisoning the blood of our nation. They're coming from prisons, from mental institutions, from all over the world. Without borders and fair elections, you don't have a country. Make America great again. We must win in 2024, or we will not have a nation. Thank you.
So it's been pointed out to Donald Trump where this comes from and what the rhetoric has hints of, and yet he keeps on using it. So why does he keep saying things like that? Well, maybe because recent polling shows that those anti-immigrant comments are helping him more than they're hurting him, specifically with Republicans in Iowa. In the latest NBC News Des Moines Register Media.com poll, which was conducted earlier this month, 42% of likely Iowa Republican caucus goers said Trump's poisoning the blood remark made them more likely to support him. That's compared to 28% who said those comments made them less likely to caucus for Trump, and 29% who said it had no bearing on their support for him. I mean, I think, Jen, I guess the question for Democrats here is how do they counter this? Because just pointing out that this has echoes of Adolf Hitler, and I've just come from spending a few days in Vienna, and remarkably, people were talking about these comments in that city, where you can imagine the resonance is so vibrant. What did Democrats do to counter that polling that shows that more people will vote for him because of those comments?
Well, it's more people within the Republican Party, right? And it's it's not even a majority. It's not. I mean, I look at that and I'm like, okay, it's 42% of Republicans. That's not a majority of Republicans, and that's certainly not a majority of Americans. And I think, and this is, I mean, I think we all know that this is what the media struggles with, and what I think the Biden White House tries to calibrate is how hard do you go after defining Trump and how early, because people become, because the things that he says is so extreme. Comparisons, you know, how long is your runway that you can continue to, that people don't start to tune out because they've heard time and time again, this is the most extreme thing ever. This is the most racist thing ever. This is calling back to phrases from Hitler. And so it's like, it's hard to calibrate that. But I think what they have decided that they need to do, and you know, you see the president do this in fundraisers, and when the campaign really gets underway soon, because this campaign is going to start soon, because Trump is going to probably wrap up the nomination early. They're going to be that tough on him because the president's words are going to have resonance, even when we keep hearing over and over again just how dangerous Trump is. It's really the only option you have.
Sam, it's usually a rule of politics that if you have to say things like, I haven't read Mein Kampf, that means you're probably losing. But that does not appear to be the case this time around. Trump has had to issue that denial in recent days, but yet certainly his poll numbers haven't slipped. So Jen just touched upon how the Biden team is going to approach this, and we've been writing on that as well, that they're going to call it out as they see it. But what do you think other Republicans might do? Those, who reliably stand up to Trump. We heard from Mitch McConnell this week saying that he condemned these kind of remarks. But what about the Republican primary field? Those who are, at least in theory, trying to beat Donald Trump.
And we've seen it, right? Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, sort of tepid pushback, I would argue, saying it's language they would not have used, inappropriate perhaps, but nothing along the lines of comparing Trump to Adolf Hitler, which the Biden campaign has done. I mean, Biden campaign literally put together a graphic with Trump's image and Hitler's side by side and comparing the quotes. That's not a fairly aggressive, that's a highly aggressive campaign attack from the Biden campaign, which they say is justified. They said the historians are pointing out that this is fascist, authoritarian rhetoric, I should say. But yeah, the Republicans have not gone to that length. I think part of the reason is obvious. The polling, as we noted, supports, in the context of Republican primary, supports what Trump is saying. I find the more interesting conversation to be the one that Jen had, which is like, where does the Biden campaign bring this? And one of the things I've been trying to grapple with and trying to figure out is, are they worried at all that because by fact that we've been through 4 years of Trump and came out on the other end, and here we are, that maybe the voting public doesn't take these threats of, fascism and the loss of democracy all that seriously. They lived through it. They survived it. They came out on the other side. Maybe when they hear the Biden campaign say, hey, this guy's evoking Adolf Hitler, echoing Adolf Hitler, they say, yeah, we dealt with Trump for 4 years. We know who he is. And it didn't ruin us, so why are you saying that now? And I do wonder if that's in the back of the Biden campaign's mind.
Yeah, there's certainly a fear that voters have been desensitized, and the Republicans have done a really good job in downplaying what happened on January 6th, for example, whitewashing that. And there is a fear that that could be the stakes of a Trump presidency may not be quite known to all the voters. We're going to come back in just 1 minute and bring you Vaughn Hilliard's new reporting on the possibility of a coalition government deciding the presidency next year, an idea that's being pushed by the group trying to mount a third-party campaign. Morning Joe is back in just 60 seconds. Get better than the teapot one, but those are just some of the short videos that Rudy Giuliani, the man once known as America's mayor, has been making on Cameo for the last 2 years in an effort to make a little extra income. Yesterday, Giuliani filed for bankruptcy after he was ordered to immediately pay nearly $150 million defamation lawsuit judgment to those 2 former election workers in the state of Georgia. The judge lifted the typical 30-day waiting period over concerns that Giuliani might try to hide his assets, which in the filing, Giuliani lists as being between $1 million and $10 million, with his current debt at more than $150 million. The filing also noted that the former New York City mayor has other lawsuits pending against him with up to $500 million in total estimated liabilities. A spokesman for the former Trump lawyer released a statement that reads in part this: the filing should be a surprise to no one. No person could have reasonably believed that Mayor Rudy Giuliani would be able to pay such a high punitive amount. Chapter 11 will afford Mayor Giuliani the opportunity and time to pursue an appeal while providing transparency for his finances. In a statement, the attorney for the former election workers called the filing unsurprising, adding, quote, it will not succeed in discharging Mr. Giuliani's debt to Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. So, Jen Palmieri, no surprise here that Giuliani would say, I don't have the money to pay these 2 workers. And I think there are fears as to just how much those workers will receive. But again, I can't help but see this and think about the incredible, swift and steep fall from grace from a man who was such a hero to so many Americans on 2001. Would be hard-pressed to find a comparable slide anywhere in American history.
Yeah, I can't. I don't. Yeah, not one doesn't come to mind. And I think that if you don't have deep exposure to the sort of Trump and MAGA world, you might not appreciate how much the grift helps to prop up former President Trump and his whole operation. You know, there are millions and millions of Americans that are true believers and really committed to Trump and believe what he says. He says what I think, and this is what I hear all the time when I'm on the road. And then there are people like Giuliani and others that help prop up this whole operation because they are making money off of it. And it really is a big reason why the whole machine continues. But that, I mean, the teapot, wow. I mean,
oh
you
my
know,
God.
Sam said it in the 5 a.m. hour. You can't make it up. And
it's so humiliating. It's so humiliating.
Yes,
I mean, how the mighty have fallen. I just, you know, I hope that none of us are ever in a position we are so desperate for money that we have to go on television to people in New Zealand and say, I'm a teapot short and stout. Anyway.
I'd do it.
Sam would.
Sam?
No shame. It's a good song.
Okay, none of us except for Sam Stein would do such a thing. Okay, let's move on. And it's kind of related. No Labels, the organisation working on a third-party presidential unity ticket, is floating the idea of forming a coalition government after the 2024 election if no candidate reaches the 270 electoral college votes necessary to win the president. I mean, Vaughan, what are you hearing? Is this even remotely plausible?
Okay, everyone work with us here. America, work with this. This is under the situation that no candidate next November gets 270 electoral college votes. Now, No Labels is that organization that has flirted with Joe Manchin potentially being a presidential candidate. They're trying to build what would be a bipartisan unity ticket with a Democrat or Republican on the president MsNbC ticket. Well, they think that they've got a real shot. They haven't announced their candidates, but plan to this spring. They think they have a real shot to win some states around the country. And if no candidate gets 270 electoral college votes next November, well, what happens? This is where, from my conversations with the group, including Tom Davis, who is a former Republican congressman from Virginia, as well as a co-founder of No Labels, we were talking yesterday, and he told me that they foresee a situation where they would build what he's calling a coalition government, where they, at the electoral college vote count on December 17th, 2024, begin negotiating with either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party using unbound electors, faithless electors. There are 33 states that require electors to vote for the candidate that their state's population voted for. But then there's 17 states that don't have those requirements. So they say, okay, No Labels, we have a few electors that either Donald Trump or Joe Biden will need. What can you give us in return? And Tom Davis told me that they believe that either policy concessions are on the line, or even potentially the VP slot, or cabinet positions, or, you know, in the situation that he provided me was, okay, you commit to us that you're going to build the border wall or not run up a deficit. We will give you our electors. This is a complex situation. And then, if I may, the next step that they're also actively talking about would be in the scenario in which the U.S. House selects who the president is. Let's say the electoral college vote that sticks there. Well, then it would come down to state delegations. Each state delegation in the U.S. House has one vote, and a candidate would need 26 state delegations to side with them. Again, that is where the negotiations begin here, and this is very complex. The last time it happened was literally 200 years ago when Andrew Jackson actually won the plurality of the popular vote around the country. But then when it was left to the U.S. House to decide, the state delegation sided with John Quincy Adams, and that is how John Quincy Adams became the president of the United States. This is complex, but what everybody needs to know is that there is a group that has tens of millions of dollars in their pockets, and they believe that they have a shot to really throw this presidential election in 2024 into a complex state of being and potentially pull off what would be a gigantic, chaotic, wild conclusion come January 2025.
Yeah, chaotic doesn't begin to cover it. We should note, of course, Republicans control the House of Representatives. Slim margin, but they do. Sam Stein, we should also note that Joe Manchin, who has been rumored to be a No Labels possibility, is having a pretty high-profile event in New Hampshire in the coming weeks, although under the umbrella of another organization, his own sort of super PAC. So give us your read on this. I know that most Democrats that I speak to are in pure panic about third-party candidates, including No Labels, believing that no matter what the scenario, no matter how complicated the plan, at the end of the day, one of these candidates, a third-party candidate, hurts Biden more than Trump.
I don't know, the way Vaughn laid it out seems pretty simple. You should probably prepare for a unity ticket, done. You know, it's straightforward. You know, they can't even figure out how to trade immigration policy for Ukraine aid right now. The idea that you would trade a border wall for a presidential ticket is absurd. Obviously, it's not going to happen. But I think the larger story is the kind of macro story that we're getting at, which is that this group, which does have, actually we don't really know how much they have because they don't reveal their finances, but they say they're going to raise something like $70 million or something like that. They're still around. They're still, holding out the threat of, having a third party on the ballot in a number of different states where they already do have ballot access. They've said at some points that they don't want to play spoiler and they recognize that Trump's a threat, but at others they're talking about now, a disputed election that will go to the House where a unity ticket will somehow, through like sheer will and weird policy concessions, win. It's out there, and I think it gets to how chaotic this election will be. And yeah, Jonathan, you're right. I mean, the Biden people, what they want is a one-on-one contrast with Donald Trump. That's what they want. And anything that disrupts that, whether it's some bizarre no labels fantasy or RFK Jr. or Cornel West, is not good for them. And I think, they want to simplify it, and this doesn't simplify it.
Yeah, that cannot be underscored enough. The Biden campaign's theory of the case is when it becomes a one-on-one, we win. Anything else? That gets messy. NBC's Vaughn Hilliard, thank you for all the reporting this morning. We really appreciate it. Coming up next here on Morning Joe, Republican presidential candidate Ron DeSantis says that one key issue has made Donald Trump stronger in the GOP primaries. We'll tell you what that is. Plus, the Los Angeles Dodgers capture yet another prized free agent. We'll have the details about the latest reported signing. It happened overnight when morning. To the NBA now, the Detroit Pistons are on the cusp of a dubious record. This is flown on. A Major League Baseball super team appears to be taking shape in Los Angeles. The Dodgers are reportedly in agreement with star Japanese pitcher Yoshinobu Yamamoto on a 12-year, $325 million contract. It marks the biggest starting pitcher contract ever for a player who has never thrown an MLB pitch. And it comes in slightly ahead of Garrett Cole's contract with the Yankees. And let's remember, the Dodgers also signed Shohei Ohtani to a 10-year, $700 million deal. So that means the Dodgers' free agent spending has surpassed $1 billion. Sam Stein, that is a lot of money. Here is, for you and I, the good news. The Yankees didn't get him. That said, Yamamoto is, we've never seen him pitch in the major leagues, but scouts say this guy has top-of-the-line ace-type stuff. And the writing had seemed to have been on the wall that when Ohtani's deal was announced and it realized that it had all that deferred money, which allowed the Dodgers to keep spending now, it seemed like the most likely target was his friend and countryman, Yamamoto. That team is going to be loaded.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm a bit sassy today. I don't mean to be, but, when you do host way too early, you get up super early, and that causes this stuff.
Tell me about that.
But we all know how we all know how this is going to end, right? The Dodgers are going to win like 114 games. Yamamoto's going to have a great year. They'll get to the playoffs. He'll give up 5 runs in the first inning of Game 1. Ohtani will end the series 3 for 23 or something like that, and they'll be bounced because that's just how it is with the Dodgers. I'm with you. The great news here is the Yankees didn't get the guy, but let's just be upfront about it. We only view this stuff through the prism of the Red Sox. This is a disastrous offseason, full throttle. This is like, one terrible.
The Red Sox simply not spending and haven't spent for a while, with the one exception of locking up Devers to that long-term deal. They are clearly the last-place team in the American League East.
Clearly.
And as far as Yamamoto goes, early reporting is the Mets offered a similar deal, which he then took to the Dodgers and stayed there. The Yankees came in a little bit less. So it's disappointing for the Yankees as well. But you're right, for the last decade, they just have that one World Series title in that short COVID season.
Fluke title.
Fluke title. And they certainly have playoff woes and more needs to address. Sam Stein, we appreciate your sports insight there and pure anger at the Red Sox, and anger that I share. Still ahead here on Way Too Early.
Walk behind. You see I'm taking pictures off that. I don't care about you. Security guard. You saw whooped out here on God. Fake police. Rent a cop. Gonna walk in front of my pitch.
And the talented Allen sisters are with us this morning. Debbie is out in Los Angeles. Felicia is here with me in New York. And good morning, Felicia. Good morning, Debbie. You guys want to, carry on here and chat a little bit? You haven't seen each other?
Hey, girl.
Hey, girl, what are you wearing?
I'm wearing yellow. What are you wearing? I'm looking at you.
What are you, yellow what?
Don't try it. I'm in suede and silk.
I know Bill Cosby paid for it. Don't try it.
Start with me this morning. Don't you start with me this morning. I have a job. I can buy my own clothes. Thank you.
Just because you're on network television and I'm on syndicated, don't you be uppity with me.
Hey, what is this the relationship most of the time, girls?
All the time. All the time.
Oh, yeah, Felicia and I, we're best friends. It's great. I'm so proud of her. I'm so happy she's, getting this break. She's always been the greatest. I've always kind of measured myself by Felicia. She always did things first. She was at Howard University. She won all the awards. She got to New York first. She did everything first and kind of warmed things up for me. So I'm just so happy for her,
Now, okay, Felicia, I understand Richard Pryor wanted you, right, to play a role in a movie that he's doing, but you, for whatever reason, are not available, and Debbie is playing the role. What has this done to your relationship, ladies?
Well, it's really just put everything right where it's always been. I feel that role was always Debbie's role, but I was just kind of holding it on ice until they got to her.
Listen to her. Well, it really just shows that the Dr. Allen's daughters have the East Coast and the West Coast trumped tight. That's right. If she doesn't get it, then I'm going to get it, so y'all girls better cool out.
All right, listen, this brings